Okay, so today's video is about champion rebalances. You know, I always like this champion rebalances video because I always think it's very positive that they go and have a look at champions that are old, that are underperforming, and then they make a little change in order to make the people that have these champions use them. In this case, we have two, and like I said, it's always good news to talk about champion rebalances, but in this case, it's a bit of a mixed feelings because depends on the champion you're gonna have. This is gonna be better after the rebalance, or this rebalance might not be what you expect. Let's have a look at it. Hi, Senda here and welcome to another raid video. In this case, we're going to be going over two champion rebalances that are going to come with the next patch. I'm not sure exactly when is that going to be. It's not going to be a massive patch, at least so far for what I've seen. I mean, I'm guessing next week, something like that. And it's going to come together some quality of life changes, which we don't know exactly which ones are yet. And the two champions affected by this champion rebalance are two champions that they were in desperate need of a rebalance. One of them, you probably seen it on the thumbnail, is gonna be TOGRON, TOGRON the conjoined. He was used long time ago with this A1 and with certain setups with Wixwell and Yannica in Hydra. So basically the idea was to make a massive shield, let the mischief head steal this shield, to spread that shield against all the enemies, and then using Yannica to blow up this shield and then kind of rinse and repeat. This doesn't work. They patched it, they fixed it, this doesn't work anymore, and the people that use TOGRON for this kind of trick, probably they put him back on the vault. They haven't used it for many things, mainly because he wasn't very good. I mean, there is a lot of void champions in this faction. I mean, Klasak is probably one of the top ones, so is Grasor. Gurugo is okay in the arena, also again after another rebalance, but then we have TOGRON, Beletar, and Diamond. He also got a rebalance. He's okay, but they're far away from like the comparison of other void legendaries like Klasak and Grasor. Clearly these three were very underperforming. Now is the time of TOGRON, and I think they're really done something really positive with him, which is a really powerful rebalance where I think we're going to be able to see him around way more than he is right now. So let me pull over here on the other screen what are exactly these changes, and you're going to see like I'm pretty happy with this rebalance. I mean, the other champion they're going to rebalance is Fiorat Wolfheart, the mythical champion from the dwarves, and I think that rebalance is not that amazing. However, I think TOGRON is going to be used a lot more, and it sounds quite interesting. So let's start with the A1. The change here is not massive, basically attacks one enemy, has 20% chance of applying buff spread, which is really cool. With books, this 20% would go up to a 50%, but 50% wasn't enough. That's what they changed. They up this 20% to a 70%, and with books will go to 100%. So basically we have a guaranteed buff spread effect in all our champions, taking one random buff from each ally and placing it in all allies. This is going to be really good if in our team we have a champion that applies only buffs to himself in order, I don't know, there's a lot of damage dealers who put like increase crit rate, increase crit damage only on their own, only on themselves, sorry, and we will be able to just get one of these and spread it all across the board with all the champions, and we're going to do this individually with each one of them. So this is very positive, and bear in mind that in this case it would be this champion placing those buffs. So we're going to see when we go on the passive and the A3 that is going to be a very serious candidate for a protection set, and we're going to see why, because it all gonna make sense. On the A2, the change is not massive, but it's obviously better. Right now, it heals allies 20% of this champion's max HP, which is not bad. He has a pretty high HP, 21,000, 20% of that's gonna be a heal. On top of that, he's applying an increased speed and also a 15% continuous heal with some conditioning, which this is what they're gonna fix. So the new version is gonna be heals, exactly the same, places an increased speed 30% for 2 turns, also 15% continuous heal for 2 turns, and also on top of that a block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns. So he's going to be able to apply 3 buffs on a single skill, on top of a 20% heal, which is pretty good. And we've already mentioned before, this skill was pretty good with the protection set, and we will be applying at least 1 buff here and 3 more here. So that already makes him a really good candidate for a protection set. On top of that, we're gonna have here that, and they also, this is a bit of a weird rebalance because they change a lot the order of the effects of this skill. So the first thing it's gonna do is gonna be remove all debuffs from all allies. So instead of then removes all debuffs. So the first thing he's gonna do now is gonna be that cleanse. Then he's gonna be increasing the turn meter of all allies 20%, so exactly like now, plus an additional 2% for each debuff removed. So it's gonna be increasing more turn meter the more debuffs he cleanses, so it's pretty good. And finally, at the end, places a 15% increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns. So it's gonna be a bit of a change of order of how this works. First cleanse, then increase turn meter. We increase more turn meter based on how many debuffs we remove, and on top of that we place increased accuracy. Pretty solid skill. Again, 1 more buff. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 we'll have here, plus whatever he spreads from the A1. And finally, and this is kind of the cherry on the top of the cake, is going to be a very powerful passive. The idea is basically the same, but better. So right now, increases only this champion's max HP every time he uses an active skill, and also increases each ally's max HP 5% every time they use an active skill. And both things can stack up to a 50%, resets each round, will not increase the max HP of boss. This means that if he's a minion of some sort of boss, this is not gonna work. I don't remember if he's any minion or any sort of boss. I guess they put this in case you're fighting Astronix in the Doom Tower and she copies this champion, so he won't be increases the boss turn max HP. I think it goes along those lines. However, the new version is an improved version of this. This wasn't bad at all, but it's even better. It's gonna say increases allies damage dealt by 10% if they currently have less HP than their target, which means that if our champion have less HP than the enemy, we're gonna deal a 10% more. However, if an ally's HP is equal to or greater than their target, so if we have more HP than the enemy, increases their damage dealt by 20% instead. So it's gonna have a very interesting synergy with HP-based damage dealers. With ally champions that have a lot of HP, more HP than the enemy, we're gonna be dealing a 20% extra damage, which on top of a protection set with 4 plus buffs, each buff is an extra 5%, as we can see what says on the set. For example, I have this Mikage, 75% chance to place a protected buff and deals 5% more damage per each buff placed by the wearer. In this case, if TOGRON is wearing a 9-piece set of protection, we're going to be applying at least 4 buffs, so at least a 20%, plus an additional 20% if our champion has more HP than the enemy. So it's going to be a very interesting addition for HP-based damage dealers. And we have quite a lot of this on the arena. We have Embreeze, we have Taras, we have Narcis, we have the latest fusion, Granite Door Keep, I think it's called. So there is a couple of champions, HP-based, that we see on arena that are going to greatly benefit from this new pass. However, on top of that, they change also this little bit over here, and instead of saying increases this champion's max HP by 10%, it's gonna say increases this champion's and each ally's max HP by 10% every time this champion uses a skill. So every time he uses a skill, it's gonna increase a 10% of himself and all the allies, which is amazing. And on top of that, this remains the same. Increases 5% every time an ally increases or uses an active skill. So maximum we can stack up 50% with the first part and another 50% with the second part, making our champions extremely tanky. This is going to be super powerful on PvE. However, on PvE the enemies are probably going to have more HP than us because the enemies are level 200, 300, whatever. However, on arena, on tanky setups, this is going to be annoying and this is going to be powerful, okay? So overall, pretty good rebalance. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't have the champion, but I think the people who have it, they're going to start using it way more because I think that the rebalance is very positive and it's going to make TOGRON more visible in several teams. So don't be surprised if you start seeing I don't know, Taras, Marichka, TOGRON, and something annoying with a lot of HP on Arena, because it's gonna increase shitloads of the damage of HP-based damage dealers. On the other hand, we have Fiorat Wolfheart, which right now is probably one of the worst mythical champions. I mean, I know that it's not used very much. Right now has some potential for Fire Knight Heart. However, it's not the best option, especially considering he's a mythical and it's really hard to get. The rebalance is not bad. I mean, they're gonna make him better than what he is now, but I think he's still very, very limited. And everything is gonna evolve around this, not this skill, but some effect, which is if an enemy is from the Gaia Impact, places a freeze, blah, blah, blah. So keep in mind, if an enemy is from the Gaia Impact, who's in the Gaia Impact? Is any of these four factions: Ogren tribes, lizardmen, skinwalkers, and orcs. And yes, there is certain champions that we see very often on Arena. For example, Gizma, we see him very often. We do see as well Gorugo every now and then. We do see Lazarius. We're going to see Donny, depending on how many turtles. There's not the most arena meta, but he can get some job done. Theox, Pythions probably. Galeos, you do see them as well. I mean, there is several champions. Marius, Wukong, Nishak, there's several champions from these factions that we do see on Arena quite often. So it's going to be very around that. The problem is going to be what happens if the enemy is not from any of these factions. So let me read the skills, let me read the rebalance, and you're going to see that a lot of these skills make sense up to some point. On the A1, basically is the same. Attacks one enemy 2 times, 50% to place a freeze for 1 turn. If the target is not under freeze, we'll repeat the attack once. And this freeze cannot be blocked or resisted if the target champion is from the Gaia Impact. Which means if we attack champions from those factions, we don't need accuracy. However, what if the enemy is not from these factions? For example, it's on a PvE or it's some certain boss or some sort of something like that. In that case, we're going to need to put accuracy on him. It doesn't make it ideal, because if we want to put accuracy, means we are going to be we're going to deal less damage, because while we need to put in accuracy, we're not going to be able to put it on crit damage or put it on HP or put it in another stat. So the A1, this is what it does. The A2 is the same. The A2, they don't touch it. The A3, however, it does receive something. All the main part is the same. However, this, if an enemy is from the Gaia Impact, places a freeze on these turns instead, and following the same as we did on the A1, this debuff cannot be resisted or blocked if the enemy is from the Gaia Impact. Also, that's an extra thing that they add here in between this grants an extra turn and this paragraph here. They add something in the middle that would say also decreases the target's turn meter by 30%. This applies to everyone. And if the enemy is from the Gaia Impact, decreases the turn meter in a 50% instead. So not bad, but again, it's a bit too focused on Gaia Impact. This nothing. And finally, the passive. On the passive, they change a bit. So right now you're saying whenever this champion receives a debuff from an enemy, has a 30% chance to kind of reflect a freeze. Occurs once per turn. This chance increases to 100% if the target is from the Gaia Impact. That is the same. However, they're going to put this second part. It increases to 100% and cannot be resisted or blocked if the enemy is from the Gaia Impact. And they add here, whenever this champion or an ally receives a debuff from an enemy, then 30% chance to put back a freeze. So it's a slightly increase. However, 30% to everyone, 100% and guaranteed if the enemy is from the Gaia Impact is a bit limited. Put it 50 for everyone, but not always there's enemies from the Gaia Impact around. The second version, this is going to be also interesting, depending who do we combine it with. Right now, he hits like a wet noodle. He doesn't hit very hard. I've encountered some on Arena that never been an issue. Neither the freeze, neither the damage. And again, it's an HP-based damage dealer. So again, we might start seeing it together with TOGRON on Arena. Who knows? New meta, who knows? However, he does receive quite a lot. Oh, I forgot one thing. On the first form, on this form, they also increase the speed from 100 to 105. I mean, it's a small increase in speed. It's not massive, but you know, 5% extra is always 5%, no, sorry, 5 points, it's always an extra increase. Second form, damage dealer form. What did it change? On the A1 is gonna be very similar, attacks one enemy. If this attack kills an enemy, resets the cooldown of one of these champions' random skills, this remains the same. And they add, will ignore 50% of the target's defense, which is great, it's gonna increase his damage. And if the target is under freeze, ignores 35% of the target's defense instead. This is great because it doesn't only apply to Gale Impact, this is for everyone. So if we always hit an enemy that has a freeze, we ignore 35% defense, which is cool. I don't know the multiplier remains the same for this A1, but we're ignoring a bit the extra defense, this might mean that we actually hit hard. On the A2, everything remains the same, attacks all the enemies, extra hit, decreases target's max HP, blah blah blah. The problem of this skill was that it doesn't have anything that makes you hit harder. It doesn't have any decrease, any ignore defense, doesn't have any extra damage, doesn't have anything special, and that's why this skill was hitting like a hard noodle, like a wet noodle, not hard. Maybe hard hurts a bit, but the rebalance on this skill is basically multiplier increased. I don't know what the multiplier is, but it's gonna be more. Is it gonna be enough? I have no idea. We'll have to see it, we'll have to test it, but multiplier increased. This A3, this is probably the interesting skill, the one that they rebalance a bit and that can actually hit hard. Again, we don't know yet, I don't have the champion, I haven't tested him, but can potentially hit hard. Right now it's ignoring 50% of the target's defense. If the enemy is under freeze, we're ignoring 100%, so this might hit hard. If the target is killed under the freeze, we also place a block revive, which is great. On this skill, they're also going to increase the multiplier, so extra multiplier damage plus 100% ignore defense, I mean ignoring all defense, this can mean a lot of damage. And what they're going to do is if we hit an enemy that is under freeze, on top of ignoring 100% of the target's defense, we're also going to be able to ignore block damage. Both things need to be combined. I mean, the enemy needs to be under freeze in order to ignore both things, all the defense and ignore the block damage. It can happen, it's not very often unless we hit, I don't know what kind of champion, someone that plays, someone with a, someone that's able to play some sort of block damage before he dies, and we need to hit him under the, through the freeze. Is not very common, but it's an extra improvement. Also, on the A2, on the A2, no, on the second part, sorry, if the target is killed under freeze, also places a block revive, and if we manage to kill, places a freeze on all enemies for 1 turn. So if we're able to kill someone with this skill, we're gonna block revive that enemy, and we're gonna freeze everyone else. The freeze debuff cannot be blocked or resisted by enemies from the Gale Impact, and in this case, we do need accuracy if we wanna freeze everyone that is not from this faction, from this Gale Impact. And again, multiplier damage increase. So this can potentially be interesting because we're gonna have different synergies with the hitting through freeze. This freeze that we're gonna apply is only going to be for 1 turn, so it's going to be quite rare that we have time to hit one enemy, kill it, place freeze in all the rest, hit this A1, resets the cooldown of the champion skill, we reset this skill, and then we're able to hit again because the enemies remain frozen. I mean, it's a bit of a weird way of, of synergy. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have the champion, we have to test it, but again, we are gonna, if we need accuracy, we're gonna be not maximizing his damage dealing ability. And finally, the passive, counterattacks with Rim Cleave, which is the A1. Counterattacks with the A1 whenever an enemy increases the cooldown of any of these champion's skills. This remains the same, and they add whenever an ally is killed, has a 50% chance of placing free in all enemies for 1 turn, which there is where you get the synergy with A3. This chance increases to 100% and cannot be blocked or resisted on enemies from the Gale Impact. So basically we need to, if the enemy kills an ally, then this passive can trigger, freezing the enemies, and since the enemy is frozen, then we can smack with this. If we smack with this, we'll kill one enemy and essentially or ideally freeze again the rest of the enemies. So I don't know, he's going to be able to freeze and smack, he's going to be able to freeze and debuff and buff, but overall I think the uses are quite limited. On Fire Knight is gonna still work pretty decently, on Waves is gonna work okay, however I think it's quite far, both of them are quite far from other mythical champions. I mean, you have Demon Spawn, all three are beasts, in Undead both are amazing, in Dark Elves, well, here's a bit meh, these two are amazing. I mean, there's factions who have the really good ones, these three again, and other factions where they don't really hit the spot. Shadowkin, again, two amazing one. These two don't really hit the spot. There's a lot of really powerful legendary here. The mythicals are not as good as some of the legendaries, and this is a bit weird. But well, that's the rebalance of these two champions. I mean, if you have any of the two, congratulations, both are going to be better, especially if you have a TOGRON, then I think he's going to be way better than he is now. If you expected something more for Fiora, yeah, I feel you. I think they could have done a bit better, but until we try it and we start seeing him on Arena, then we will be able to see if actually the rebalance is good enough or not. That's all from me today. Let me know what did you expect from these champions in the description. Over here, I'll leave you a recommended video and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.